Hi, welcome to episode 237 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea where I sell my handspun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. If you haven't come over and joined us, please do. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, July 15th. I cannot believe we're halfway through July already. And I am coming to you today full of things to show you and talk about. So I hope that you have had a wonderful week. There has been a bit of a kerfuffle in the knitting community again, and I shouldn't say a bit of a kerfuffle. It's been a long, drawn out, painful, and sad happenings in the last several days. There is a little bit on my Instagram, and I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. And so it has been kind of jarring to sit with, but I have endeavored to work on some projects and move forward. So that is what I am doing. I have lots of different things to show you today, so let's start. Today I am drinking Cretaceous Cinnamon from Tea Historic. They unfortunately are now out of business, but you know me, I love a good pun, and Tea Historic is there. It is an Assam tea with crushed cinnamon sticks, and I am drinking it in my alpaca mug that I got at Maryland Sheep and Wool when I went back in... I have to think about this. 2014, I think? It's been quite a bit. So, and it is from Green Ridge Pottery Studios. So I love their mugs and I love their outlines, and I felt like an alpaca today. I guess I don't feel like an alpaca. I felt like using my alpaca mug today. So yeah, so that is Cretaceous Cinnamon, and it is delicious. I wanted to show you one not really knitting related thing. It came up in my office supplies and in my fountain pens and those kinds of things, but I thought it was super cute, so I thought I would show you. I picked these up from Jet Pens. They are currently out of stock, but I'm sure they'll get more in. They are called Beverly Memo in a Can, and what they are is it's a little canister of Post-its, and as you can see, I selected the sheep one. There are other varieties. There is a Calico Cat, a Shiba Inu, an owl, and a hedgehog. And I think only the owl is in stock right now. Anyway, it's a little can, and inside are these super cute, let's see if they're facing the right way, super cute, they're not Post-its in the sense that they're not sticky, but they're perfect like little notes, and they're in the shape of the animal, so mine are sheep. And as you can see from the instructions on the back of the can, it's written in Japanese, so I can't read it, but you can see it. You can write little notes on them, and then you fold them up, and they stand up. So they are like this. They've got a little perforation for the ears and like a scoring, and then you can write on them and then put them on your desk or wherever else. And as you might imagine, this totally amuses me to no end. So these are called Beverly Memo in a Can. They are available from Jet Pens. They were not inexpensive, probably because they're a Japanese import. They were $7.20. Shipping arrived quickly, and I love them. I'm not sure what I'll use them for, but I love them. Look at the little sheep. So let's talk about knitting. This weekend, I finished one of the big projects I had been working on, which is a sample knit for A Good Yarn, Sarasota, Florida. Sorry for the crinkling. I was working in Anzula lace. I have the label here. It is Anzula Breeze, which is a linen silk. It's 65% silk, 35% linen. The colorway was Alice. They are skeins that come in at 750 yards for 4 ounces, and the colorway was this beautiful turquoisey blue. And I will say, so the pattern that I knit is the Riverton Tea, and that's by Sheila Toy. Now I'm going to forget the name. Last week I had it, and I didn't bring it with me. It'll be in the show notes. It is a cute tee. It is simple. It's an A-line tee, and then it has a pleat at the front, and then it has some simple garter and eyelet borders. And so I finished that this week. I was I was knitting a sample in the extra large size. And so I finished it, almost. I need to sew in a button. That's the one thing I haven't done yet, because it's got a cute detail. So let me show you. It is blocked, and of course, because it is linen and silk, and I blocked it super flat and stretched it out, it is like super flat, and you'll see. It doesn't look, like it's been worn yet, which is fine. So, this is the Riverton tee. So it is a simple tee. Like I said, it's got this nice pleat at the front, and then on the back there is a keyhole detail, which I will endeavor to show you right now, and which needs a button to close. It's just two sides, and then it's got the keyhole detail. It's not like super plunging or anything. And I found in my stash from a sweater I knit Roxy way back when she was little, I found this one button, and look at how perfect that is. Look at the size and the color, and it's perfect. I was gonna go with like a white pearl button or something, but all I had were too small because the eyelet is the actual buttonhole, so I needed to be careful that the eyelet wasn't too big for the button. And then I found this one left over. I had used it in a cardigan for Roxy, and I think it had come with 4, and I used 3 of them, so I had 1 left. So this is the perfect button. I'm going to sew that on as soon as I'm done podcasting. But anyway, like I said, it has lots of the garter and eyelet lace detailing. It just got little capped sleeves with short rows, and then otherwise it is just a beautiful summer tee. It is so a couple of things. One is it is a little bit sheer. It probably needs a tank top underneath, but it was a lovely shell pattern to knit. The fabric it created is really beautiful. It's really nice and lightweight and gauzy. And then the garment is actually just a smidge more lightweight than it should be because I did not quite get row gauge. The pattern is intended to be knit at, I think, after blocking 20 to 22 stitches, which I did get, and at 30 rows, which I did not get. I really got more, probably like 28 rows. Maybe like 26 or 27 once I blocked it. So I used considerably less than the pattern called for, which probably makes this slightly more sheer than it should be. But I still feel like even if knit at the gauge, all the photos that I saw of people wearing the finished objects, they were all wearing like a tank top underneath. So I have a feeling that a drapey top knit in linen and silk, even at a lace weight, is gonna call for something underneath. So that is the Riverton tee. It was a pretty simple pattern. I cranked this out in just over 2 weeks. And like I said, I'm going to sew that button on and take a few pictures, and then I already printed out the shipping label, and it is going to A Good Yarn tomorrow. And I just washed it in a little Eucalan. I like to use the unscented when I do sample knits because I never want there to be a perfume or a fragrance, just in case anyone is sensitive. And so that is what I've done, and it is finished. I did alternate skeins on the body, and the pattern called for over 900 yards. And the Anzula Breeze comes in 750 yard skeins. I still needed to go into the second skein. I should have used a little bit more of it than I did, but for the size extra large, it did require more than one. I think for most of the other sizes, you could probably get away with, well, I know for sure extra small, small, and medium, you could get away with just one skein. Probably the large would be a little bit more, a little bit closer. So that is done. So that means that I started on my next knit, and this is not a sample knit, this is for me, but it is for a review. I know, I'm super busy here. As I said to someone this morning, I think I said yes a few more times than I should have when I got offered opportunities to review, sample knit, and design. So I am currently balancing that out. I am booked solid through the end of August. I cannot take on any more because I am really nervous about finishing everything in time. So I did have the opportunity to cast on for a new project this week, and this is for a review of Brown Sheep Cotton Fine, which is an all-season luxury cotton yarn, 80% cotton, 20% merino wool. It comes in 1.75 ounce, 50 gram skeins at 215 yards per skein, and it is a fingering weight. I selected the color New Age Teal. So this is Cotton Fine from Brown Sheep, and Brown Sheep makes lovely workhorse yarns. This cotton is, well, it's interesting because it's got a small percentage of wool in it, which makes it a little bit easier on my hands to knit than I think of cotton typically. It's also super, super soft. Now it feels a little cottony, but I think it feels a little, I don't even know how to describe it. It just feels like it's cotton. But I think what's going to happen is that it's probably going to soften up and bloom when I wash it. And I believe this one calls for, well, it calls for hand wash in cool water. So it's not machine washable. It doesn't, at least it doesn't recommend that. So I will, well, I'll probably hand wash and block it at least the first time. But I think it will bloom a little bit and probably get just a little bit softer. It's not soft now. It's just, I want it to get a little more like fuzzy and bloom. And I hope that it will when I wash it. So that is what I've got. I've got 4 skeins of this. I accidentally selected the wrong size. Go me. For the yardage that I have, I should have knit, I was basically between sizes on the pattern, and I could have gone for a smaller, snugger fit or a looser fit. And I read the yardages wrong, so I thought I had enough to do the looser fit, so I cast on for the looser fit. So I am knitting the looser fit. My guess is that I will not have quite enough to finish, and so for safety precaution, I went ahead and ordered another skein. Brown Sheep always recommends that you buy all of your skeins together so that the dye lots match. I'm hoping that I won't have too much trouble. I'm also thinking that by the time I get to the point where I need that, it's either going to be the very bottom of the sweater or it's going to be the little bit at the sleeves, and so I will fade in as appropriately and hope, alternate some skeins and hope that it won't make too much trouble. I placed that order over the weekend. I'm just getting towards the end of skein 1, so I should have skein 5 before I get to like skeins 3 and 4, so I should be able to work that in. What I am knitting, I showed you last week, I am knitting a sweater pattern by Laura Ayler, and it is called Breezeway. And it is a pretty simple, it's a combination between a yoke and a raglan tee. Starts at the top, ends at the bottom, go back and add just a little bit for the sleeves, and you are done. And I thought that this would be kind of the perfect summer tee. I'm sort of getting into knitting more summer garments. I didn't think that I would, but fingering weight and cotton seem like appropriate garments. So I don't want to give anything away. I sort of did just now. Basically, the top is at first a yoke, and then there's some raglan shaping to finish out the sleeves. And I am about 8 rows away from finishing the yoke. So that's what I have done so far. So it won't look like a ton, but it is enough work. Basically, like I said, you start at the collar. There is some shaping built in, short row shaping to give the back just a little bit of a higher rise than the front. And let me hopefully not drop anything off the needles and get everything where it needs to be, because I have an end and a this and a that, and yeah. Good Lord, I cannot, apparently, I just twisted this up and made a mess out of it, and here I am fumbling so I can show you. I should have gotten this ready pre-podcast. Okay. Here we go. This is what I've got so far. Doesn't look like much, obviously, but it's several inches of the yoke. Like I said, there is some back short row shaping. I'm working on the yoke shaping. I feel like this will probably, I'm getting gauge, I should say, and I feel like it will probably be opaque enough that I will not need to wear a tank top underneath it, but we will see when I get there. I'm unbothered either way. Obviously, if my bra is super show-through, or if it's super show-through and you can see my undergarments, I will not be wearing it without a tank top, but I actually think, even against my body, I think it will be fine, because it's not super drapey, and like I said, I suspect that the cotton and wool will bloom just a little bit in the process. So that's what I've got so far. It's just got a simple garter edge, and then like I said, I'm currently in endless rows of, or rounds I should say, of yoke increasing. I am close to 300 stitches on the needle now, so honestly the only thing keeping me from doing more at this each night is It's not that the yarn is so cottony, but it's also just that there are so many stitches around the needle now, and moving them all around after like 10 or 15 rows, my hands get tired, so I need to take a break from it. I also have another sample, which I can't talk about, that I'm working on. So what I'm trying to do is alternate this with that so that I work on both. I would really like to finish this tee by the end of the month, which means I have 2 weeks. I think I can do it because it's probably only going to be between 800 and 900 yards of knitting. The upper size is 930. I have 880 yards. I could potentially make it a little shorter or work in that 5th skein if the color match is not terrible. So my plan is to try and crank this one out by the end of the month, because next month I have to finish that other sample, and I am going to be doing a design with some review yarn that I will show you in a couple weeks. So also my knitting time is limited by Tour de Fleece. I'll get there in a minute, but this is my focus project for the month. I did not bring, so that covers this. This is the breezeway top. I am using US 4s, which is what it called for. I was a bad podcaster and I did not swatch because I was in the middle of swatching for all the different sample designs, and I was kind of in row gauge hell. Because lately I have learned that I can match stitch gauge, but sometimes matching row gauge is a problem. And I decided that I would go ahead and knit this, and if it came out, I have people around me who are slightly bigger or slightly smaller than me, and so I figured out if it did not come out of a size to fit me, I would share it with either people in my knit group or my sister, and so I just decided to throw caution to the wind, do as I say, not as I do, and I ended up getting gauge perfectly, so I'm not too worried about it. Also, that brings me to an interesting point. Just a moment talking about gauge. I have been doing more sample knitting lately, and sample knitting is a slightly different beast from knitting for oneself. We talk about doing gauge swatches and the importance of getting gauge when you knit a pattern so that it comes out appropriately. I am at the point in my knitting career, if I want to call it that, or knitting journey, where if I don't get quite the gauge the pattern calls for, but I like the gauge that I'm getting, then I go ahead and just adjust the pattern. So in general, I don't have garments that come out too big or too small because I see what gauge I get and then I work with that gauge. And if I can't attain the gauge that is called for in the pattern, I make some decisions about how I want to modify the pattern to accommodate that. However, when one sample knits, one needs to actually knit true to the pattern. One needs to knit the size one is prescribed, and one needs to hit the gauge that one is prescribed, because there isn't an element of the custom fitting. And so in some cases, I am knitting samples for catalogs. And so it is a pattern where I am knitting the sample that will be photographed in the catalog, and they are booking the model that is the size to wear the size sweater that I'm knitting. So if the sweater comes out too big or too small, it is a big problem. In other cases, I'm knitting shop samples for, or samples for stores. And in that case, it's a little bit less critical that I hit everything exactly perfectly. That said, people are going to be trying on this garment. I mean, the purpose of a shop sample is to sell a yarn and potentially sell a project, which is we're showing you can make this project in this yarn. Would you like to purchase it? So it is important that the sample be as close to the pattern as possible, because people are going to try this garment on in the store, and they are going to decide if they are going to make it based on what the sample looks like. So like I said, my row gauge was not quite right in the current one that I did, and I'm hoping that won't be too much of a problem, but for the sample knitting that I do for catalogs, it's super important. Which leads me to the next piece of the puzzle. So for the last several months, I have been using, I have gotten a couple sets of Knitter's Pride interchangeable needles. I have been using both the Ginger set and the Knit and Purr set. Both sets are wood needles. And for the last 6 months or so, I have had problems getting gauge, which I don't usually have. I've been knitting long enough that usually I know when I pick up a needle and the yarn, or the needle that's called for, normally I can get pretty close to a gauge with the needle that's called for. And so I have been racking my brain recently about why I have not been getting gauge. And I was kind of, like I said, I've been racking my brain. I've been really frustrated because I keep having to drop a couple needle sizes to get gauge. And the other day, it occurred to me that for years, I have been a knitter who loves my Addi needles. And I realize needles are a very personal preference. I am not in any way pushing Addi needles. But what I am saying is that when I first started working in the knitting industry, I worked for a store who sold Addi needles. And sometimes they paid me, and sometimes I took things in trade because it was a second job for me. And a lot of the times I took Addi needles in trade. And so primarily my stash of needles is made up of Addi needles, either turbos or sock rockets or just the regular Addi needles. And I've been using them for years. I think part of my issue with gauge recently is that I have been using wood needles, and I don't usually use wood needles. And I'm also not, I want to be clear that I am not maligning Knitter's Pride needles, because I don't think that there's anything wrong with the needles. I think I knit differently on metal needles than I do on wood needles. And so for this project, I pulled out my metal needles rather than my wood needles. And like I said, I threw caution to the wind. I didn't do a gauge swatch. I just went ahead and knit with the metal needles anyway. And it's coming out on gauge. So I think what I have figured out is that if I want to hit gauge on try number 1, I probably need to stick to metal, and that I can use the wood needles if I wish, but I need to be careful about doing gauge swatches and making sure that I'm getting gauge, because my gauge is very different on wooden needles. So I don't know if that's of interest to any of you, but I thought it was kind of one of those things that I was lying in bed late at night, frustrated because I had done a bunch of gauge swatches for this next sample that I'm knitting, and I was having a lot of trouble, and I was particularly having trouble with row gauge because I was getting my stitch gauge, but I was not getting my row gauge. And I was lying in bed going, why is this so difficult? Why have I not had problems with this? Why am I only having problems with this in the last 6 months? And it occurred to me I had completely changed the needles that I used. And so I was knitting differently on different kinds of needles. So that is a long-winded topic. I guess I'm just kind of bringing stuff in from everywhere today. If you don't enjoy these kinds of things, please let me know, because sometimes I feel like maybe my meandering train of thought and my little, even though they're aha moments to me, they may not be useful or interesting to you. But for me, I'm constantly questioning why I can do something one way and not another way, or what's changed to make a difference in the process. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure that that's where I'm going, but I think I might be on the right track. So that's my knitting. That was a lot of knitting content for a time when I said I was mostly going to be doing spinning. I am also getting warm. I don't know that I get nervous when I podcast, but I'm getting super warm in here. So I'm going to take my sweatshirt off. So let's talk about spinning. There's not a lot to show you. There has been a ton of spinning though. So last week when I talked to you, I told you that I had started spinning on that big bump of fiber, and I explained how I was going to do the fractal spins. And so this week I have a finished bobbin. This is the first bobbin, and it has the long color repeats. So there's a lot of red on this bobbin, but it has the long color repeat portion of the fiber. And like I said, it is reds and kind of swampy greens and purples, and it's got like more of a coral red and more of a deep red and like a little bit of more brown, and I am loving it. And this is approximately 7 ounces. This is on my Acreworks bobbin. I love these bobbins. And on the, I have been spinning on my Hanson mini spinner. And these bobbins hold up to 8 ounces. I will tell you, I can fit up to 8 ounces of singles on these bobbins easily. I cannot necessarily always fit 8 ounces of plied yarn because when I ply, there's more air to it. It's loftier, and so it doesn't pack on the bobbin as neatly as the singles do. But this is approximately 7 ounces worth of work, and this is the long color repeats bobbin. I am now working on the shorter bobbin. I did not take it off the wheel because I really hate to interrupt that process, because if I take it off the wheel and I put it back and the tension's not quite the same, it changes my spinning. So I should just not be a weenie and take it off, but I didn't. I actually only have 2 small fiber bundles left. So this is probably between 1 ounce and 2 ounces on that second bobbin. And I am so excited because that means I will probably finish this. I won't finish it tonight, but I'll probably finish it tomorrow night, which means then later this week I can ply and I'll have 14 ounces of yarn done. So I am super excited for the tour. To those of you who are participating with us, I have been checking the tag out on Instagram and trying to leave hearts and comments where I can. And I am enjoying watching all of you in the Ravelry group sharing your spins with us. People are spinning some really interesting things. We had one spinner on our team who was working on her master spinner certificate at Olds College. And so she was away spinning quite a bit. And she couldn't really tell us about what she was doing. But when she was done, she showed us a whole set of samples. And we have several people who are spinning, we have more than one person who's been spinning flax and some hemp. And so it's been a educational for me to learn about how to spin those fibers, because I have spun like a flax linen once before, and I found it incredibly difficult not to end up with twine. And it was an interesting experience for me, but it's educational to me to see how other people spin those things. We have some people who are working on fleeces, so it's a lot in the same color, but they're getting pounds done. And then we have some people who are spinning the odd braid here and there and some really bright, colorful photos. I awarded a prize last week. I will award more prizes this week. And then I have actually had a couple exciting things come in. Brown Sheep Yarns has donated some fiber as a prize, and it actually hasn't come in yet, but I know it's in the mail now. And they are going to be launching some spinning fiber probably in the fall. As it turns out, we had hoped to time all of this around Tour de Fleece, because that's a great time to launch spinning fiber, but they are not quite ready yet. So they sent some undyed fiber. And actually, they sent some undyed fiber to the office where I work, and somebody in the office went ahead and dyed it, and the results are fantastic. And she dyed, I want to say she dyed 2 or 3 half-pound bumps, and it's kind of a trio of colors that goes well together. And so what I thought that I would end up doing is, like I said, the fiber has been donated by Brown Sheep and has been dyed by my colleague, who actually also has an Etsy business, and I'm terrible because I do not remember the name of it. And I will be putting it in the show notes, and I will be adding it to everywhere. But so one of the grand prizes will be approximately a pound. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit off those 3 half-pound bumps that she did, because I'm going to spend a little bit of it and do it as a review. And then the remaining pound will go to one of the winners. So, and the winner, I'm going to make that one of the sort of grandish prizes. After the tour is over, I'll ask everyone to post a photo of all their spins. Everyone has an equal opportunity, and that will be one of the prizes. I will also be offering another fibery prize. But I was also contacted by a podcast viewer and someone who's spinning for the team, and she asked if she could send me some fiber as well to be given away as a prize. So there will be lots of prizes this time. I'm so excited. I mean, I always make sure that there are prizes from my stash, but when a sponsor wants to give us some fiber, and you guys sometimes give me things to give away, it is super fun, and I always love giving out prizes, so it's fabulous. And you know, the more prizes that I get, the better chance that lots of people can win things. So super exciting. So I hope that you're if you're spinning along with us, you're enjoying it. I hope you've had a successful tour so far, and if you are not a spinner, you get to watch me spin. And I'll only be talking about it for 2 more weeks, because the tour goes through Sunday, July 28th. So you won't have too much longer to listen to me talk about the team and the prizes and whatnot. So I think that is it for today. I think I've covered enough. It's been half an hour. I've kept you long enough. I hope that you are enjoying your crafting wherever you are, and able to take a break and do some resting and relaxing. One of the things that I thought about a lot this weekend is, particularly on Instagram and in the knitting community, there is a lot going on right now. And while I firmly believe that it is important to be aware of what is going on and to think about your responses and actions in relation to what is going on. I also think that it is necessary to sometimes take a break from it. And there is no shame in taking a break and trying to concentrate on your crafting and, immersing yourself in things that are a little bit less stressful sometimes. I don't want to say ignore it entirely because we are having important discussions. And I shouldn't even say we. I should say important discussions are happening by people more knowledgeable than myself, and I am reading and learning a lot. And I do think it's important to stay connected in the community, but I also understand that sometimes you have to turn off the internet and craft for a little bit. So I hope that you have a lovely week ahead, and until I see you again, I will say happy spinning, I don't know how I screw up my own tagline. Happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.